Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at Morphy's taking a look at some of the particularly rare firearms they have at the moment, like this James Warner revolving carbine, a very stubby revolving carbine, I should say. These are typically found with 22 or 23-inch barrels. This one has been cut down to something like 9 or 10. Fundamentally, it is a 6-shot, roughly 40 caliber, percussion-fired revolving carbine. And I've kind of had a side thing going, trying to film all of the different models of revolving carbine from this period. There are a number of them. They're all very rare. This is one we haven't covered before, so we're doing this one today. Unfortunately, this is also one that's pretty poorly documented in general. James Warner was a prolific gun maker, and we know about a lot of his different designs, but no one's done a whole lot of research on the man, and these in particular, there are a bunch of holes in this story. So I'll tell you as much as I can, but it's far from a complete story. First off, James Warner starts working in firearms sometime around 1839. He is a lifelong gunsmith. He will work as a gunsmith, making guns until at least 1869, so full 30 years of work there. He has a brother who's a master armorer at Springfield. He has another brother who might have been involved in another gun company. Again, a lot of the data about this guy's a bit unclear. He lives in Springfield. He actually runs the Springfield Arms Company, which is not related to the Springfield Armory. Springfield, Massachusetts had a bunch of industrial manufacturing capacity in it, and James Warner's Springfield Arms Company is a private commercial enterprise not connected to the government. They just happen to be in the same place. Anyway, what makes this kind of interesting is that Warner had like 4 different variations of revolving carbine, and as far as we can tell, the first ones were actually self-cocking or self-rotating. So the idea is when you cock the hammer, the cylinder rotates. This is the fundamental thing that Samuel Colt patented. It's what made Colt revolvers special compared to everything else that was around when Colt started that process, when he got that patent. Now, Colt wasn't actually exactly the first person to do it. There were revolvers from a guy named Elijah Collier. We actually have a book on Collier revolvers over at Headstand. If you're interested in that sort of thing, you can check it out. But Colt's patent was supposed to expire in, I believe it was 1849 or 48. At any rate, it didn't, but it was supposed to expire, and it appears that Warner designed and started manufacturing a similar system in a revolving rifle to have available to sell as soon as Colt's patent expired. And then Colt ended up actually getting an extension on that patent for a number of additional years, and it appears that that took Warner a bit by surprise, and he had to redesign this gun to not use any of Colt's patented features once that patent was extended. Now, if you look up Warner revolving carbines or revolving rifles on the internet, one of the primary other video you will find is a clip from an old episode of Pawn Stars. And the gun they have in that clip is actually, in that segment, is actually one of the early connected, like patent infringing Warner carbines. You can see they cock the hammer and the cylinder rotates. This appears to be Warner's response to, uh-oh, I can't actually sell those, I need to redesign this. And if he's not going to have that connection, if he's not going to have any of Colt's patented features, well, we might as well make the whole thing a lot cheaper and maybe can compete on price instead of trying to compete on technical quality. And so this system leaves this gun and the others like it leave off a bunch of features, not just you have to manually rotate the cylinder, but also a lot of smaller things like these aren't set up to have ramrods on them. The earlier mechanically connected ones do have ramrods, so that it's easier to load, but you know what? You can always have some sort of tool or jerry-rigged system and load the cylinder independently and then assemble it into the gun and save some money by having less stuff to manufacture on the gun. Anyway, that's the gist of what we understand from Warner carbines, but there are a couple different models. And like I said, we don't really know the exact chronology of what came exactly when. So let's go ahead at this point and pull this one apart. I'll show you its features and how it works. Give you a little up-close view. Let's go ahead and start with a quick look at the markings. Here on the right side, we have James Warner, Springfield, Mass. And then a much smaller mark that's a little hard to read that says Warner's patent on the left side. Now, this particular example has a just 10¼ inch barrel. Typically, these were made with 22 to 23-inch barrels. This one was clearly cut down at some point. You can see the front sight here has been added on. It didn't leave Warner's shop in this configuration, but someone decided that they wanted it, well, very short and convenient. The rear sight is mounted here on the top strap. The rear sight is centered. The hammer is just offset to the right a little bit so that you do have a clear line of sight. And of course, remember that when you're firing it, the hammer is going to be cocked. So it's also going to be up above the line of sights. That sight is kind of typical for the period, a very tiny little V notch. And the front sight is a only slightly larger V-shaped post. At the back end here, we have a stereotypical pointed butt plate, common for the time period. Also typical for these Warner revolving carbines, there's a small brass patch box there that you could use to store material, whether it's cleaning material or percussion caps or whatever you wanted to keep a little bit of in the stock. The trigger guard here is also very typical for Warner carbines. You've got essentially, this is sort of like the mid-1800s version of an angled front grip, except it's an angled rear grip. Instead of having a wooden pistol grip, you have this thing which you can get a bit of purchase on. You've got two fingers here, and you can pull back against this to, I suppose, get a better grip on the gun. Then out here, we would normally expect to see some extra stuff, but Warner appears to have deliberately left all that off to try and make the guns as inexpensive as possible. So other patterns of Warner revolving carbine will have a loading lever down here, like you would see on a typical percussion revolver, as well as a cleaning rod or ramrod underneath the barrel. Neither of those exist on this example. The way that this operates, of course, the hammer is quite simple. It has a half cock and a full cock position, and it just goes through this hole in the top strap to hit a percussion cap to fire. In order to rotate the cylinder from one position to the next, you have to have the hammer cocked, either half or fully, and then we have a cylinder stop latch down here that just has a little spring. You pull it in by hand. That allows you to then rotate the cylinder, and you can see we have cylinder stop notches here at each position. And when that little latch clicks into that stop notch, it holds the cylinder in position. Percussion cap is lined up with the hammer, cylinder or chamber is lined up with the barrel, and it's ready to fire. Now, disassembly will start by taking the barrel off. There's only one screw holding it on, and it's right here on the back of the top strap. There we go. We pull that guy out, and then the barrel assembly rotates 90 degrees and slides off the front of the gun. Not much going on there. You can see there is a groove here that lines up with this lug on top of the frame to help hold that prevents this from stretching forward when you fire. That's pretty much all you've got there. The cylinder then just slides off the cylinder arbor. We have nothing on the back here because this is just manually indexed, so just these indexing notches. There is this large deep groove that is milled all the way around the circumference of the cylinder. That, I believe, is another patent infringement issue. One of the things that Colt's patent protected was the idea of having basically shields in between each of the percussion cap nipples. That was a feature that would help prevent chain fire. Colt patented it, and I suspect in order to make sure that he didn't get sued for violating that patent, Warner engraved or milled this deep groove all the way around so that there is nothing in between the individual percussion cap nipples. The cylinder here is serial number 27. As is the barrel assembly, we have it marked here, here, and here. The front of the frame here doesn't really have anything going on. There's a little block here that holds the cylinder just slightly forward, probably to reduce friction. And the back end of the gun is serial number 83. So I suspect this was a replacement barrel at some point. In order to finish our disassembly, we have to take off the side plate. There are two screws holding it on. One here we can just take out. The other one over here doubles as the hammer access pin, and I don't want to remove the hammer. So I'm just going to unscrew this one enough that it backs out of the side plate, but not so much that it comes completely out. There we go, there's that screw. I'll go ahead and take tension off of this by dropping the hammer down, and then we can pull our side plate off. Note that our side plate, like the rest of the back end of the gun, is serial number 83. And inside here is really pretty simple. You've got a big V spring to power the hammer. You can see that this was clearly a single iron casting. You can see the raw cast surface on the inside. We've got a hammer here connected to, well, hammer and the sear behind it connected to this screw across the frame. And the trigger here will lock into these two notches. The first one is the half cock notch. So right there, that puts the hammer in half cock, and you can see that that is a pretty deep notch so that you cannot pull the trigger to get it out of the half cock notch, and it's not going to slip off. To get it out, you have to cock it all the way to full cock, and that notch is much more of just a straight flat surface, so that when you pull the trigger, it will drop out of that notch, which allows the hammer to fall, hit a percussion cap, and fire the piece. We have our little cylinder stop down here. Really nothing to that, just a very simple little spring-loaded catch. There you go. There is one of the Warner simplified model of revolving carbines disassembled. That's all there is to it. After doing the mechanically connected guns, the patent infringing guns, and these simplified guns, sometime by like 1856, Warner had introduced a better version of the gun that actually had a solid frame to it instead of being open at the bottom. He did a small number of those as well. None of these guns were made in large quantities. We're talking tops a couple hundred of each pattern. And then he appears to have abandoned the revolving rifle concept entirely, which makes sense. These things were never all that popular. There's always a risk of chain fire in them, that they will fire multiple rounds at the same time. This is a potential issue with all percussion revolvers, but it's a lot more of an issue when it's a rifle where you may have your hand out in front of the cylinder in case that happens. Exactly how often this sort of chain fire happened is up for debate, but there was certainly a stigma of it that applied to revolving rifles. So later on, he'll go on to design other things. During the Civil War, he makes a breech-loading carbine that's reasonably successful. After the Civil War, he's also doing other revolver handguns. So Warner himself is a quite prolific gun maker, and I would love to get some more details on some of his various sequence of revolving rifles. So hopefully in the future I'll have a chance to get some of the other models to film for you guys, but for the time being, we have this one that I thought was a pretty cool opportunity to show you. Big thanks to Morphe's for giving me the opportunity to put it on the table here and film it for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.